From WSL Pure, this is One Ocean.
Hello, everyone, and Happy New Year. It's 2020, and I am stoked for the year ahead. It's going to be a big one. Welcome to Episode 5 of WSL Pure's One Ocean. I'm Reece. I hope you're having a great start to your year. My wife, Annalise, and I have a fun little tradition of getting in the ocean to start the new year, no matter where we are in the world. When we were living on the east coast of the U.S., that meant some icy, cold polar bear dives. Here on the West Coast, it's a lot easier, but wherever you are, it's a fun way to get salty and begin the year in touch with the ocean. So if you're lucky enough to be near the coast, get in the water. If you're new to the podcast, welcome, and please be sure to check out some of our earlier episodes or take the plunge and hit subscribe to get a weekly dose of inspiration from the people on the front lines of ocean conservation. For example, this week we hear from Nik Strong-Cvetich, who is the executive director of Save the Waves Coalition. He is a tremendous force for good in ocean conservation. He's done conservation work around the world. He's really smart, often incredibly funny, and I'm really glad to have him on the show. I'm also really excited to share Nik and Save the Waves work because of how important conservation is. As we look around the world at so many ocean issues, I continuously come back to the need for greater conservation, for greater actual protection of habitat. And in 2020, we have some plans coming together to support global conservation efforts. So this is a great way to kick off the year, thinking about conservation, thinking about how we proactively protect places, and just really preserve this world instead of, this constant cycle of destroy and rebuild. All right. Well, I always really enjoy catching up with Nik, and I love the work that Save the Waves Coalition is doing. So please enjoy this conversation with Nik Strong-Cvetich and a very special guest caller. Here we go.
For those who don't know you, Nik, who are you?
That's most people. Most people don't know me.
And that's because you're not on social media, and we will get to that.
That's true, yes. My name is Nik Strong-Cvetich, and I'm executive director of Save the Waves Coalition.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And what brings you to LA? You're actually here for a cool reason.
I came to see you and hang out. I felt like we hadn't caught up for a long time, so
You felt like you had to get here in person to get...
I came explicitly for this podcast, and then I happened to drop by the UCLA Pritzker Emerging Environmental Genius Awards, which
Hashtag humble brag.
Yes, this is no, it was cool actually. I came down here. I was nominated. They have this cool emerging award at UCLA's Institute of Environment and Sustainability called the Emerging Environmental Genius, and it's for people that are doing really cool stuff on the environmental front who are under 40. So some of our partners at Conservation International have a good connection there, and we've started working with UCLA on a number of things. So I got nominated in part because some cool stuff we're doing at Save the Waves, and in part because they couldn't find anybody else that was under 40. so I was there, and it was actually really cool. Like, I like to make fun of myself and other things because I don't think they're that serious all the time. But the people that won the award and the other people in the room were really doing some cool stuff, and just super inspired. The winner was this woman, Hindu Ibrahim. I can't pronounce her last name. Umadu. I failed at pronouncing her name.
Not a genius, apparently.
That's why I didn't win. It's my failure to retain names and pronounce things correctly. But she's really inspirational. She's from Chad originally, and she's talking all about indigenous women and how they can be a catalyst for change in fighting climate change. So she is just really inspirational. Check out her story. But yeah,
awesome. And you actually, we're going to get into Save the Waves, which is kind of really who you are and it's not who you are, but it's what you do. It's where you spend most of your time.
Yeah.
Away from your family anyway.
Yeah, that's right.
But you have some interesting other accolades. I did a little bit of homework. You're also a Malago Foundation. Am I saying that?
Yeah.
Malago Foundation, Henry Arnold Conservation Fellow.
Yes.
That's pretty incredible. Are you still an adjunct professor at Middlebury Institute of International Studies?
Technically, I'm still on the website.
Are those worth digging into? I mean,
Sure.
They sound really interesting.
Yeah.
I want to get to Save the Waves and what your work is, but I think it's important that people understand that you're being recognized for this work and that it's important.
Yeah, it's good. It's an interesting thing to sort of like have accolades when you've just been doing the same thing for a long time. People are paying attention now for some reason. But I got to say, the Malago Foundation is a really, really cutting edge sort of philanthropic group in the San Francisco Bay Area. They focus in two areas on international development and like poverty reduction, and then on conservation. So their main conservation thing is the fellowship program each year, and so they identify kind of the best and the brightest and most scalable conservation solutions out there. So I think we were picked from one out of 1,200 different vetted organizations.
Wow.
And there was I think there was 12 of us this year in the cohort. And they're really cool people, from everybody from like the CEO at Rainforest Alliance to like a woman working on really exciting stuff in Madagascar and conservation there. So it's just an inspiring group of leaders to be part of. And they're all about finding solutions and empowering that leader to really scale to conservation at an impactful level, at a globally impactful level. So that was very cool to be recognized for, because I think I've been nominated like 3 years in a row. And so they were just tired, like, God, this guy, like, let me just put him in here. So he stops. I have to stop trying to spell this stupid name. And they really run a great job. And actually, a couple of the people behind it are very surf oriented. So it's sort of like, I think I also got overlooked because they're like, oh, this is surfing and conservation. This can't be serious. Like, we know surfing. And I think it was actually bringing them along too, to be like, this is actually the thing you love can be a solution for the thing you care about.
Interesting. That's super cool. So let's dive right into Save the Waves.
Yeah.
The Save the Waves Coalition, I think there are many people listening who probably know about you, but probably a bunch who don't.
Yeah.
So what is Save the Waves? What's your mission? What is the work that you do?
So yeah, Save the Waves has been around for about 15 years. And, we're an international NGO, so we work all over the world. And our mission is to protect surf ecosystems around the globe, like full stop. So we did a lot of soul searching in the last couple of years about like really what change are we affecting, and like how does this matter actually beyond just the surf world, like for the world. And so I think that was kind of our bread and butter, is really using surf and the power of surfing for conservation.
And that's split into 3 programs essentially, right? So you have the World Surf Reserves, Surfonomics, and then Endangered Waves is the way you...
Oh, I'll tip you off because we haven't released it yet, but we've been doing
New website coming?
New website coming, new strategic plan. It's 3 strategies. It's creating protected areas, so like either marine protected areas or terrestrial protected areas like a national park or a state park around surfing locations. And we're doing that in biodiverse regions, so places that have very, very high biodiversity. So we're using surfing to actually protect plants and animals in these unique ecosystems. We're using technology tools for stewardship. So both our mobile app, which you're familiar with, and people can download at savethewaves.org/mobile app.
Plug. We'll throw that in the show notes, of course.
Yeah. And then the third solution is what we've always done, is mobilizing the surf communities around the world in terms of campaigns. So using a lot of the kind of conservation marketing strategies that you guys are so good at doing to really engage people to either stand up for a place that they need to defend or stand up for a policy that's going to protect their place for the long term. And I think that's what's unique about surfing. When we started really looking at this work through the lens of surf ecosystems, it was like a light went off in my head of like, how did I not see this before? It's really, any surfer can tell you that there's a unique combination of sort of oceanographic and geological processes that lead to an amazing breaking wave. Like J Bay is like no other place in the world.
Totally.
But it's because of how the reef is formed. It's sort of the bathymetry of the ocean there. It's how the contours of the coastline that make that place. But because of that unique place, there's an abundance of plants and animals that really depend on the uniqueness of the coastline there. And then springing from that, there's a really unique community and economy that's been generated because of that place.
Yeah,
so
people.
People. So it's really the place, the plants, the animals, and the people that come together to make a surf ecosystem. And when we start thinking about protecting all of those aspects, it becomes really, really powerful.
Right. So that's surfonomics essentially, right? That's kind of the idea behind it a little bit in terms of the value placed on a space.
Yes, it's a component of it, I think, is
Right.
like once we start looking at it in terms of economics of like, well, what does this place really provide you? It provides you as the surfer a sense of well-being. It provides you, the surfer, a sense of community. There's all the same surfers that you see all the time there. And then you, the surfer, are part of an economy there. So like J-Bay has got places to stay and restaurants and things that are not found in other places in South Africa because of the uniqueness of that place. So I think it's it's protecting all of that. And, to think about, okay, well, where are we going with that? Our big goal is to protect 1,000 surf ecosystems around the world. So we set this huge milestone, which is really cool to me.
I don't have like a soundboard in here, but if I did, that's where I would do like that's crazy. 1,000 waves. That's amazing.
Was that up or down? Was that like?
No, that was meant to be like, whoa, 1,000, what? Like,
yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah, and I think when you start thinking about, there's a finite amount of surf ecosystems that like us as a global surf community depend on. And there's different studies, there's Surfline data, there's somewhere between 3,500 and 5,000 of them. So that goal represents 20% of the world's surf ecosystem. And
let's slow down there because we're moving pretty fast through a lot of this because we've got a familiarity. So Surfline says 3,500 to 5,000 surf communities.
Well, not just Surfline. The different spots that are sort of out there and known. There's spots that are unknown. Right. So when we talk about, and I'm defining surf ecosystem as kind of a specific wave, if you would.
Okay. So like the North Shore is not a surf ecosystem. You'd be specifically saying pipeline.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because when you think about the things that come together, what formed pipeline, like it's Ehukai Creek, sort of makes kind of two spots really. It makes the channel and pipe. And then it makes the like Ehukai Beach Park, whatever. I've never been there, so I'm just sort of guessing.
What?
Yeah. Where's my invite? Do I get to come?
You're looking at me as if I have control over that? I don't even think I'm going this year, unfortunately.
Right. Well,
sorry, I can't help out.
We'll go on vacation.
I think you do go to enough cool spots. So one part of the Save the Waves whole program is the World Surf Reserve. So let's maybe quickly talk about the World Surf Reserves, and then I want to talk about Brazil.
Sure. Yeah. And the World Surfing Reserve is really like a very important component of the protected area strategy. So that's what most people know about. Most people know us for. They may even know about World Surfing Reserves apart from Save the Waves. But it's really a recognition and protection of some of the most important surfing locations around the world. So we have 11 right now. It started in Malibu. It went to Manly Beach, Australia. It's in Ericeira in Portugal. It's in my backyard of Santa Cruz. It's in around Ensenada area in Mexico by Ricardo Santos, and including the island and the big wave spot there. It's in Huanchaco, Peru, which most people are like, where? What? And
Peru has great waves.
I was blown away by that place, to be honest with you, because it's not just the quality of the wave. It's also what does that place mean to the history of surfing and the environment. And that's where arguably the first surf craft came from. So I'm not going to, there's maybe a lot of Hawaiians listening, so I'm not going to say it was the first surfboard, but the first surf craft, because for 3,500 years, the local fishermen have been using these reed boats called caballitos de totora, which are like just an ancient technology of boats made from reeds within the wetlands of that area. And they use them to this day. They fish with them, but they also surf with them.
Interesting.
And so they're shaped with a lot of rocker, like a early 90s Kelly Slater potato chip board. But they're built that way so they can go through the waves and then come back without purling and spilling all your fish. And so there's documented, like in the ancient temples that are around the area, there's documented paintings on the walls that are like 1,200 years old of people riding waves on these crafts. Have
you talked to Brother Cliff about this, Dr. Cliff Capono? Did you tell him that the Peruvians maybe beat the Hawaiians?
No.
Well, he's about to find out.
No, it's. I don't think it's about beating one. It's just about it's sort of like longboarding versus shortboarding. They're just different things and different discoveries.
Or just convergence of, developing technology and great ideas that we're drawn to these waves. Like it's only natural that we figured out ways to venture out into the ocean and to then have some enjoyment in that too, right? So
and if you had an ancient culture that was doing pretty well, sort of economically, you had enough food to eat, you had free time,
some time to play,
you're going to look out and be like, well, those things are actually pretty fun.
Yeah.
But yeah,
okay,
I'll go back to my list here and just hit the rest of them.
Right.
In addition to that, we had Punta de Lobos in Chile, the big wave spot. We had Gold Coast, Australia. And most recently, we had Guarda do Embaú in Brazil.
So wait, you're saying we had as if it's past tense, but these are all present
they're still
tense.
There. Yeah.
They're all World Surf Reserves, which means there's a local sort of council, right, who has stepped up and said, we're going to help protect this place, both environmentally, commercially, trying to make sure that it's sound, right? I mean, is that a fair way to sum it up, or how do we really distill it down for for people to understand.
Yeah. I'll throw in the last two, which are just
Okay.
Puerto Rico and in Aguadilla area and Noosa, Australia. So
Right.
those round out the whole list of them. But basically the process is that we get lots of applications from around the world of communities that want to protect their spots. And so it's a pretty complex application. We vet all of them. We have a vision council upon which you sit. And we go through a list of criteria and actually vote on them. And we vote one per year. And then we verify that and we begin planning with the local community. So we set up what you were alluding to, a local stewardship council, which is generally made up of the surf community, the local environmental community, local government, local business, and academia. And then we develop a very strategic plan called a stewardship plan with them. So we walk through all the things that are threats to the surf ecosystems within the reserve, talk about the underlying causes of those threats, and then talk about strategies to address them, and then divvy up that work from the strategies among Save the Waves, but also local groups that can take it on.
So you're kind of taking your expertise as this top-level org, working with a local council to say, hey, this is what we've learned, this is what we've seen work. Let's make sure we engage the local business community, the local surf community, the local government. You help them navigate that and you put them in a position for success so they can protect their local place. But there's people on the ground who can do that and know their local spot better than you do, right? Coming in from Northern California. But you have that expertise in how it gets done.
Yeah, it's the process and the platform and the recognition that I think are powerful,
right?
For people, because like you said, like I don't know someone's spot better than they do, and who am I to like fly and plant the flag and be like, it's protected, I've protected it for you. Like that's not what we do.
Right.
We're the coalition, so we really work to build a coalition and work together with locals. I think that's the only way that it works. And so but we've seen that by building that process and having everybody that's representing the community follow the process, then they all have this product that they own, and they're all pushing in the same direction. Because it happens countless times where you work in a community and you're like, did you know that person over there is doing this thing? And they're like, huh, no. Like there's been so many times where I think in Mexico or even our backyard of Santa Cruz where it's like, did you know that group planned a beach cleanup for today on the same day that you cleaned it? And they're like, no. So it's just the most simple thing, but it's like having a plan that everybody's sort of agreeing to, and then everybody's playing to their strengths and pushing the same direction. So then it's a multiplier of those efforts.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's powerful about it.
It's a super powerful model. So let's get into Brazil, because this one, I mean, I've been across this one for a little while now, where some of the other ones I've known historically, this one I kind of, just saw. I knew it was going to be dedicated. I know Adriana was involved. I got to see, on your social media, on Save the Wave social media recently, you all went down there. It looked like it was an amazing trip. I know some of our WSL team were down there. Shandy down in Brazil was there. And so it's really cool to see it come to life. Talk about this spot. I also heard you spoke very fluently in Spanish for a second there. And then I also heard, were you speaking Portuguese down there?
No, I was faking Portuguese.
Faking Portuguese?
Different than speaking Portuguese, yeah.
I don't know. People said you did a pretty good job. Like the rumor has it that you did all right.
It was passable. People understood. That was, I think, so I'll take a big step back here. The dedication is actually a really super important part of this. And that represents once you're done with all of the planning and the direction that you're going,
right?
We dedicate it formally. So you can be accepted as a World Surfing Reserve, but then you need to be dedicated as a World Surfing Reserve officially. So that's the culmination of all this work, of all the planning, of getting everybody on board. And it's really an honor. It's an honoring and recognition of the local community, their efforts, and the importance of that place. So I'll dive in.
Well, just because I have an expert who maybe was there, ready to kind of dial in here, who was helping inform me about how you did down there.
Oh, we're getting the expert. I just saw who that was. This is a call-in show.
We're gonna check in with a friend.
Okay.
We're gonna see.
You're dialing a friend.
Yeah. Phone a friend. Joao.
Joao, what's happening?
Can you hear us, buddy?
I sure can.
So for the listeners at home, yeah, we've got Joao de Macedo, big wave surfer from Portugal, on the line, Save the Waves ambassador, friend of WSL Pure, all around great human being and environmental activist and surfer. And Joao, you were down there in Brazil with Nik, and I was just commenting on how you informed me that he was speaking Portuguese.
Yeah, Nik's fluency in Portuguese was tremendous. He progressed from the first couple of days, and he was really just blowing people away with his control of the language. It was awesome. People were very grateful.
That was generous. Thank you. Hey, it's really good to hear your voice, buddy. I miss you tremendously. Just so you know that, and we got that out of the way. But thank you.
Nick.
Yeah. It was. It was amazing.
Yeah, Joao, tell us while we have you on the line a little bit about your experience in being a part of this. We were just diving into the dedication and being there for that. What does that mean for you?
I mean, I think that, I think each location has its magic, but I think this one in Brazil was, it's just kind of like from the start, I think the program always wanted to really enhance local communities, and I think that's why Nik was making such a good effort with his Portuguese, because it's just it's contagious. You just really want to melt in with the locals and just with the gratitude that they have for the designation, and that just becomes something that's again, it's just contagious. It's just kind of that really good thing of getting people together, multiple generations, the older surfers, and just seeing all this heritage and culture around a surf spot, and all the layers and how surf and waves really influence and change and mold people's lives. And it's just one of these iconic locations that is huge in Brazilian folklore, but really didn't have such an international platform. And so for Save the Waves and all that work that the crew did there to get the designation, was just it was just really special, and they were just so grateful. It was just a long journey. It took 3 years, and they were just really diligent with all of it. And it's kind of, Nik Mucha, he was like in the newspapers. We were all he was just kind of like this explorer. He was kind of like, oh, this American guy is interested in us. So it was just kind of like remote, and to have then Nik as executive director there, and then
you flew all the way there from Portugal. I mean, that's a long way to go.
I flew all the way there. It was I hadn't been with Nik in some time, and when he kind of told me, hey, Sean Thompson might not be able to make it. Joao, what do you think? Did you think you can substitute these big shoes? And I was like, damn, well, that's the big call, but I'll do my best, kind of thing. And I'm honored. And it was just amazing, because it's a dream, it's kind of like, remember, that's it. The World Surfing Reserves is really about just kind of having surfing in kind of a designation, but also like an environmental connection. And the dream was this, that local communities could kind of speed run a little bit legal designations and actually be able to enshrine places that they care,
so
places
cool,
that they love.
It meant a lot. Also, I think I have to give a shout out to Joao, because it meant a lot for everybody there that he came all the way from Portugal. And it's sort of like, wow, there's this big wave star that's coming to pay attention to us.
Yeah.
And that can't be underscored enough, I think. And then, just the power, the moment of dedication was a really powerful one. They had like this guy, Mateus Solano, who is like a Brazilian TV actor and huge star there. Adriano de Souza, and Ricardo dos Santos was from there. And he was actually, he was killed about 200 yards from where the dedication was.
Wow.
Right in front of his grandfather's house.
For those who don't know, Ricardo dos Santos was an incredible surfer and was unfortunately killed. Was it 2 years ago now?
It was 2 or 3.
2 or 3, yeah.
And and he...
Wave of the winner. He won the Andy Irons Award at Choco.
That's right.
I mean, amazing barrel rider. Yeah.
He was an amazing surfer on tour, and really he was at the heart of that community, and that place and that wave is what kind of made his career, And so having his grandfather come down and speak about what it meant, and in my choppy Portuguese understanding, I could just feel the emotion coming out of what a moment that was. So it was a little heavy for me to try to go from Adriano to Ricardinho's grandfather to then me like recapping it all. But I think that's my job, is my duty, is to help provide meaning for those places and like bottle that sentiment a little bit. It's harder when I'm constricted by having to like read my Portuguese and do my like kind of fake accent. But
well, Joao was like live tweeting to me or live messaging me saying how you were doing a great job and how Shandy was there and everything was pretty rad. So Joao, we're going to keep going. Thanks so much for calling in, man.
That's
catch
great
up with you
to hear
soon.
you guys.
You've got big waves to train for up there at NAS.
Yeah, no, Nazaré is pumping nonstop, and all the boys
Awesome.
are here at the cinema. We're watching a body surfing movie pretty soon, a guy who body surfs here
epic.
at Nazaré, so it's ongoing.
Epic.
But yeah, Nik, Reece, thanks so much for the invite. Great to hear you guys. All the best.
You too.
Yeah, buddy. Cheers.
See ya.
Aloha. Ciao.
He's the best.
Mystery callers. Yeah, no, he was epic to have on the trip. He was like we couldn't have brought a better person. Just fluent in Portuguese. Like he was actually there at the founding of the program. Like it really came from his idea. So like Joao was one of the founding people. He
kind of like worked with Say the Ways, right?
Yeah, he used to work at Say the Ways, before he moved back to Portugal, and so he's he's an ambassador and he's pursuing the big wave career. But he's such a layered individual of different capacities and interests that I think it's not just big wave frother like charging around the world trying to figure out things. He's a really deep and just kind individual. So there couldn't have been a better person to have on that trip.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I agree. Totally. So it's funny because we're talking about conservation. We're talking about protecting places. And I think historically the vision of that is we conserve some stuff and protect some animals. But we've talked a lot about people. We've talked about people and their connection to their place. And I just feel like that's a really interesting thread to tease. I feel like we're hitting, there are probably plenty of people who've been working on this for a long time who are like, yeah, of course. But for many, we've always seen the environment as other. And now, the last 20, 30 years, we've realized how closely connected we are to it as a species and how we've been kind of messing it up. And so now more than ever, conservation is super important. And it's not just about conserving these places to have a place to go recreate or to protect this place to have a park to go camp in or whatever it is. It's really about our own existence on this planet. And some of that is coming to light next year in 2020 with the 30 by 30 initiative. I mean, that's a big conservation goal. The idea is trying to protect 30% of terrestrial and marine habitat by 2030 by the IUCN and other groups. And I know that you work with them. So I thought maybe you could speak on that, the importance of like conservation, because that's the real work to me is protecting these places instead of trying to clean up after we've already screwed them up. Like how do we get ahead of it?
Yeah, I think there's two things there. The sort of how do you get people involved, and why is recreation a force for that? And then how are we actually doing conservation on the whole, towards some of these big goals that are really recognized, at the UN level and at these big international agreement levels. And I think when you look back at the roots of conservation, where it all came from, it was completely tied to recreation. So a lot of it came from hunters that wanted to recreate, or from birders, the oldest one, or hikers. The oldest conservation groups in the U.S. are
Audubon.
The work that John Muir did, the Audubon Society, the Sierra Club, and the legacy of Teddy Roosevelt on national parks, and those had to do with hiking, birding, and hunting. So the idea that recreation sort of went away and it's not part of conservation, I think isn't entirely correct. And then we've morphed in conservation to kind of say, like, even in the ecosystem definition, we were kind of pushing the bounds with the surf ecosystem definition, because people are like, well, people aren't part of it, the ecosystem. It's the plants and animals in place. And you're like, what? People are both like animals, and they contribute to the degradation or protection of the place. They influence the ecosystem tremendously. So I think...
And hey, when you jump in the ocean, you're part of the food chain.
You're part of the food chain.
In Santa Cruz especially.
Yes. There are things much larger than you that can eat you, and you are part of the ecosystem. that's what an ecosystem is, right? You are influenced by it and you influence it.
Yeah.
And that happens for every animal that's part of it. The great white shark eats stuff, and that has that ripples down the food chain. And there's a food chain for the great white shark to eat. If that food chain's gone, the shark is affected. So you're both affected by, and you affect those ecosystems. So I think the big conservation organizations are paying attention to this now, where they're like, ooh, people are actually part of the solution. So getting to your question about the 3x30, I think that's really where we're going as an organization, is helping realize some of these big, huge goals, and that surfing can be a big part of that. So that's why we're pushing towards a protected area strategy, both using World Surfing Reserves, but also a new concept called Surf Protected Area Networks, which is a lot of...
You're like doing all the segues for me. I don't even have to tee it up. This is perfect.
Yeah, I read your notes when you were in the bathroom. So
keep going. Surf Protected Area Networks.
Yeah, so it's creating those legally protected areas. Like it could be a state park, or it could be a national park, or it could be a marine protected area, or it could be a marine managed area, or a reserve. It's just whatever legal model works the best in that cultural and economic and political context. And so part of the work we've been doing is identifying 10 really important regions for both surfing and biodiversity where we want to work in that capacity to actually help these goals. Like all these countries have these commitments to, like the Convention on Biodiversity, or the new, the big push for 30x30. Like those are all things that they're going to have to actually show they're making headway towards. And surfing is a huge opportunity for them to actually do that. And we've seen, I was just looking at the numbers, oddly enough, that the dive community has always been really big in terms of conservation, getting reserves and protected areas and financing those. But the dive industry and divers is such a smaller community than surfing.
Right.
And it's so much less accessible. So when I just looked at this, and I think there's something like 12 million divers, and the dive industry is worth about $80 million worldwide. This is what I read. I do the research and edit out my falsehoods, but it's something around there.
Yeah.
And the surf numbers that I've seen is there's approximately 35 million surfers worldwide, and the industry is 12 billion B, not 80 million.
Right.
So that's like monumentally bigger than the dive industry, which has been really effective in conservation. And so sort of, this is part of the work of Pure, is like, how do we...
You're turning this interview around?
Brought to you by Pure.
Some good radio voice there, by the way.
Yeah, that's... when I get fired, you can bring me in and I'll do the plugs for Pure here. I'll work for Cold Brew.
I don't think you're getting fired anytime soon. I think you're doing a good job over there. But it's interesting that you bring us into the, you've tagged me into the dialogue here.
I've tagged you.
Yeah. I mean, we see this as part of our role. Bringing the surf community into conservation more. I think there are a lot of people who are doing amazing work, yourselves included, Surfrider, a bunch of groups around the world that we're already partnered with. There are a bunch more that we haven't worked with yet, but are fantastic. And yet there's still so much more we can do. It's one of those things where it's just kind of, there's a lot that we can do, and we know that, and so we got to kind of chip away. But I do think 2020 is a big year for the surf community to step up and really start to take a look at how we can promote conservation and protect more places more proactively.
Yeah, and I think we kind of share that goal. Like you guys have a massive voice box and a massive audience to kind of get people motivated, but they're going to look for things to connect with. Right. And I think that's where we're particularly well poised, is that we have these solutions ready to go. And so every extra person that we get motivated and mobilized really helps us with these solutions that we've articulated.
Right.
And that's where I think you guys have such a unique media platform that it's both, it's completely international. It's a huge sport in other countries. I mean, Brazil takes this stuff so seriously.
Totally.
And the U.S. surf community doesn't quite know what the sport means, I think, to people in Brazil, and how pumped they are about it. And there's just a massive opportunity, I think, to engage a lot of people in conservation, and that you guys have the network to do that because you're really international based. So it's not just like, the National Football League and we're going to reach all these people in the U.S. It's like you are the World Surf League, and there's...
Yeah, it's in the name.
11 countries on tour. No.
Well, I mean, you can talk about the CT, but
Yeah.
the QS then expands it to, tons of places. I mean, we're all over the world, truly.
Yeah.
The WSL has events going on all the time. Now, not all events we own. Some are, licensed out, et cetera, whatever. But it's really, really cool that we can reach so many people in so many different communities. And so, yeah, we take that really seriously. That's why we got to nail our message and kind of be communicating on the right topics, which is, again, why we work with partners like you to say, all right, hey, are we in line here? Are we, saying the right message, and are we on point? Speaking of different communities, unless you want to say anything else more about the SPANs, the Surf Protected Area Networks.
I think it's just, that's going to be our, I think that's why all these kind of fellowships and accolades are coming, is sort of what we're in the process of building, is that this is going to be real durable conservation, and that again, it's not just Save the Waves doing it. It's really everything we do is pursued by a coalition. So we have great local partners, like in Brazil, we had an amazing array of partners, and there's more of those networks that are happening with like our groups, like Aprender is one, and they're starting to form the National Surf Reserves of Brazil, which we're a part of. There's partners in Chile that are working on it. There's partners in Peru that are working on it. A huge partnership that's on the horizon for us is with Conservation International. So they don't
Heard of them?
Yeah,
Tiny little group of individuals.
very small, very very tiny.
We're
office
joking.
of
They're huge.
I don't know how many people work. I think they have like 1,000 people working there.
Yeah, they're pretty big.
Yeah. So, and they've got offices in 36 countries around the world in the highest biodiversity places. So partnering with them makes this solution scalable, and they have a lot of expertise in the creation of protected areas, but they don't really know, they don't understand surfing, how to mobilize surf communities, how to incentivize people to work together. So I think that's where we kind of come in and join forces.
Awesome.
Hey, a quick break from our conversation to hook you up with a discount from our friends at Outerknown. Outerknown works hard to build clothes with people and planet and the ocean in mind. You can see that in the materials and methods in their craftsmanship, like using 100% organic cotton in their transitional flannel. Organic cotton means no pesticides, no insecticides, no herbicides, or GMOs washing out into our ocean, so naturally I'm a fan. The transitional flannel is an instant staple. It is buttery soft, it almost feels like cashmere, fits really well, and comes in a bunch of different cool colors. You can get yours at outerknown.com today and enter the code OCEAN at checkout, and you'll get 25% off your full price order. That's outerknown.com, outerknown.com, and remember to use the code OCEAN at checkout for 25% off. Check it out today. They have men's and women's stuff, a bunch to choose from, outerknown.com, and don't forget promo code OCEAN. All right, back to the show.
What I was going to move to is talking about endangered waves, because you've had a couple other projects going on. Punta Cana,
Yeah.
an endangered wave, and are there any others endangered currently that you're kind of mobilizing around? Do you want to talk about your endangered waves program? Is that going away with the new strategy, or
No. I think it's important to keep doing. It's just important to triage what's actually really important and why,
right?
and how and what level we engage.
So what's going on down there?
Punta Cana is a great example. It's in Oaxaca, and basically it's just an epic point break. But aside from that, when you, again, put that definition of a surf ecosystem on top of it, it's incredible. It's got amazing waves, super long right hand. And now I'm like blowing the spot up a little bit. But I guess that's my job. But aside from that, just the ecology of the area is really cool because it's a huge wetland system behind the dunes. And then it's got like tons of mangroves that grow there as well. There's turtle nesting habitat. There's an artisan fishery, so fishermen going in and out of there. And it, and there's a surf economy that's developed down there as well. And so I think that place, aside from just protecting it for the waves, is ecologically really important. So those things all.
And what's the threat?
The threat is a big industrial port that's sort of gotten support from the Mexican government up, I think, as high as the presidential level. And the idea was to make a giant port that you could ship things, build basically a highway to the Caribbean side, and then you have another kind of Mexican version of the Panama Canal.
Whoa.
So that's what they wanted to do.
But that could mean huge economic gains for those local communities, right? I mean, not just to take the other side for a second, huge economic gains if that potentially becomes a boom town for that community. So I imagine it's challenging for you to go in and say, hey, we should protect this place. And everyone's going like, wait a second, what? This is going to bring jobs. This is going to create, business in my community. This means, upward prosperity. How do you navigate that?
I think that's true. I think it's, I don't think you necessarily need to be against the port. I think you have to be like, what are you losing for the port? And do you need to lose it? And I think you don't need to lose all that they're losing, one. Two, I think there's a lot of promises that go into local communities by developers that are not true. So you see this like time and time again with sort of the half-finished building in Mexico. It was like, oh, this project's going to be great. It's going to bring all these jobs. It's going to be awesome. And then the finances run out, and they basically like given their fishery away for this promise of economic development.
We're going to build you a school or something, and then it never really happens.
What our team was saying that I thought was particularly interesting is that there's this great group of people that live down there, and in some ways, like they don't have a lot, but they really like what they have, and they like the lifestyle that they live. And so they're sort of like, we don't want to be a big industrial port town because we have this amazing landscape and it's providing for us. Some people obviously want jobs and
sure.
are going to be motivated by that. But I also think in our research that they don't have the money to do it yet. So it's sort of like propose, accepted, get the financing, make it. And so if you can kind of interrupt that chain, then we will have, done something important. And I think more than just one place, even as important as being protected, it's also the story of the lesson is like, this will keep repeating itself
right
until you don't have anything left. And so it's kind of a call to action of like, stop this project, but what's the proactive structure that will follow it? So it's sort of a way to engage people on the idea of a network of protected surfing areas in Mexico as a solution to this, so that we don't keep seeing great waves and great surf ecosystems destroyed.
Go proactively protect a bunch of places. The other places can be developed, hopefully in a environmentally friendly way, but kind of let's protect really the important spots first.
Yeah, and that's the idea about it, is sort of do this pivot. Like, here's a great example of this threat, and let's stop it and make something proactive to not have it replicate itself. And I think it's getting good traction as well, is that there's a growing a real environmental consciousness in Mexico that I think we're seeing more and more now. And so, we launched a petition about it with our partners at Wild Coast and, and some of the locals down there. And the thing has gotten like over 250,000 signatures on change.org.
Amazing.
Which is, 250,000 of people have done, it's not a giant action, but have actually stood up to be like, I don't like this.
Right.
And the majority, I always worried about having super gringo campaigns of like, okay, just Southern California, so they didn't like it, but in Mexico, maybe they're for it. But the preponderance was people from Mexico.
Awesome.
So our like Mexico change.org is like, hey, this seems to be doing really good. Like, can we promote it? Do you guys want help? Like, can we talk about how this is working?
That's great.
So that's been really cool to see as well. It's like it took off. I think we had a goal of like 100,000 signatures, and it was blown away very quickly. Like, we were like, oh, wow, we're up to 80,000. Like, we're almost at our goal. And then all of a sudden we looked again, we're like, whoa, it's like
stretch goal.
190 now. Huh.
Stretch goal, man. Keep those stretch goals coming.
That escalated quickly.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, so Nik, we've now talked about work that you've done in, Brazil and in Mexico and Peru and all over the world. You are fluent in Spanish. Seems like you speak some Portuguese, or at least you try. Also French and Italian.
Yeah, those ones I can actually do. I've done business in all of them, but Portuguese is complete fiction.
Cool. All right, so we'll say that you don't speak Portuguese fluently, but super interesting that you speak so many languages, and then you've also done work. I mean, in Nicaragua before your Save the Waves time, and Uganda, right?
Yeah, I mean, to show my true colors, I was always a skateboarder as well, so I skated in a lot of weird places in my existence.
Okay.
And I went to a conference, like conservation conference in Uganda, and I just as like a skateboarder, like, oh,
so you've been on this for a while, like you've been on conservation, like that's always been your thing. It seems like
I've been doing conservation for probably. I don't even know what year it is anymore. It's just a scary future that we live
2019.
in. 2019. Yes, that's right. It's about 15 years I've been doing conservation.
Wow.
And I was just at this conference and I was always in a habit of like, well, I'm going to this weird place. Like maybe there's like a skate park or some place to skate. And so I did this, I just Googled it, and there's this Uganda skateboard union. And I was like, you got to be kidding. Like, what the hell? So I read about it, and it was the first skate park in East Africa built by kids in the community, and just this totally outrageous story. And I'm like, oh, well, we should just film. Like, there's got to be a cool story in here. So I went and I just brought a camera, and I realized, one, I need to drink more water because my hands were shaking. I was like, looked like the Blair Witch Project, It was like a worst production value ever. But the story, sometimes you have good stories. It doesn't matter how good the production is.
Right.
And the story was incredible. This guy who's a good friend of mine now named Jackson Mubiro. And he met this like South African guy that taught him about skateboarding, and he had a little piece of land. And so they cobbled together this idea to build a half pipe, which then became larger with a couple other international folks, and built a whole skate park like in this weird little outskirt suburb of Kampala in Uganda. And kids were just ripping. And it was so cool because it wasn't like eventually it probably came through Tony Hawk or whatever. It wasn't like somebody from the outside was like, I'm going to show you skateboarding and here's your skateboards and go, It was completely like from the bottom up of like, what's this weird thing? Oh, this is awesome. And so like the style of skateboarding that they had was just this complete thing that they came up with on their own. And I just thought it was so creative. And I think somebody also showed them like a Dogtown Z-Boys movie. So they were doing a lot of weird like laybacks,
old school
like,
moves,
like 70s moves, but then just putting all their own stuff into it. And so it was just cool to see it kind of germinate on its own without a lot of outside influence. And then traveling in Nicaragua, I kind of heard of the same project. Like locals built a skate park at a school and was the first one in the country. And then sort of what did that mean to everybody? And I just thought it was cool. It was like an interesting side project, and it was rad. Like the skater Chico Brenes was there when I was there, so we just hung out and skated. Cool. And so he was like in this movie, and it was a good like, how do you make a movie?
Yeah.
Like experiment for me. So,
and do you think that that's been important in your work, like just all this travel you've done and engaging with local communities, trying to understand what you're doing now, your previous experience, kind of being hands-on, just on the ground in local communities? It seems like you have a real knack for getting in and trying to understand what's important to them and the importance of telling that story and sharing it.
Yeah, I think I've kind of always done that. Like I've gone on a trip. My wife hates me for this because I really suck at going on vacation. Like I'll be good like sitting around on the beach for like 2 days, and I'm like, shoot. I'm just sitting around here, like, let's do something interesting and creative. So it's always sort of like getting to the heart of like what's important to a community, how do decisions get made, what's the story of the people.
So when you go on vacation, do you then turn it into a conservation trip? You're like, honey, there's a city hall meeting that I just want to go to, and I just want to listen in.
She would just be like, she's like, why are we going to this meeting right now? We went to Portugal, and
you turned it into a work trip?
I was like, we just have to do this one thing. I just have this meeting with the municipality, and it's going to be really, and then she's like, and now there's another lunch you have to go to. And then, but we got to go to the contest. It was like at Super Tubes during the contest. So there's like doors that open with that too, which is kind of fun. So,
yeah. But it's tough to balance it when you're working on something you care about, to balance that with, your personal life. I mean, you have 2 kids, you're married. But what the work you're doing is hard and challenging. You're 7 people at Save the Waves?
Yeah, there's kind of the core nucleus is 7, and then we have like fluctuating between 4 and 5 people that are sort of on the periphery of that.
But that's not a big staff for the amount of work that you do.
No, it's not.
On a tight budget.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We get a lot done.
It's a lot.
And people think we're a gigantic organization.
You're saving the waves. It's a bold name.
A lot of waves.
He has a lot of waves.
Yeah, it's the 2 things is my wife is very patient with me, and she's awesome, and our kids are awesome, and but now it's a little bit different because they're the priority. So It's not like work is not the priority. It is a priority, but it's not the priority.
Right.
So there's kind of less like, I'm just going to go to Indonesia right now. And, there's other things that were formerly very fun are like a little bit more stressful because I'm like, okay, like I want to get there, get my stuff done, go home and like hang out with you guys, So that's important. And then I think how we actually get stuff done, and this makes it even more important, is by those coalitions. Like there's no way we would get this much done with 7 people around the world if we weren't really good at building those coalitions and incentivizing them and feeding them and having those partnerships. So really, you know, like we're just a mirror and a catalyst and a platform for the really good work and the desires of local people to get it done. Like, you know, again, to my friend Quito in Brazil, like he did an amazing amount of work for his place and we helped them along the way, but he's really part of the team and the coalition that gets it done. So in Brazil, there's, you know, on the local stewardship committee, there's like 22 people and 7 kind of hub, like core executive committee there doing all the stuff. So Save the Waves' reach is magnified by those 22 people doing stuff that all have a job in the state park, in the municipality, as a water quality scientist, as an economist, as all that stuff helps us really like deliver results, which is what matters at the end of the day.
Right.
You know, so we're nothing but a coalition, and we're nothing without the local partners.
Very cool. That's awesome, man. So we're obviously going to link to Save the Waves Coalition. I would say that you all could go find Nik on social media, but you can't.
No. Well, you can, but...
Well, you're on Instagram, but I think you haven't posted in years.
It's a bunch of weird stuff, too, that I just like thought was funny, and then now it's awkward.
Is that hard for you? Because, you know, here you are doing so much work, and so much of modern business is telling story and being out there and being like a vocal leader of an organization. Like Chad at Surfrider does a great job of being very vocal and, you know, calling people out on stuff. You know, I think that that's an important role to play. And then you've made a conscious decision not to. So I'm curious, is it challenging or does it allow you to focus more? Is it a strength?
Both, I think. I mean, I think I I was pretty active on Facebook for a long time.
We all were until we realized.
And then I realized like nothing on there was true. It turns out the world was round this whole time, and all my buddies are posting about the flat Earth. And, no, but I just thought that I spent a bunch of time posting on there. At the beginning of Save the Waves, like I started the Instagram account that we have. Like,
sure.
I built that community network, and then it was growing. I was just doing it all the time. You know, so I'm just like on the phone, blah, 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 typing things out or posting things or getting this picture, or, you know. And then our team took that over more and more because, one, they were way better at it than me. So the huge shout out to Lauren Perino from our team, because she manages a huge amount of communications, and she's an amazing individual and I've never met anybody who can learn better than her and just like do new things and make them look amazing. So she gets a huge shout out. But as that team capacity grew, it was less and less important for me to do it and manage it. And then I just felt like at a certain point, like I'm spending so much time in this not world of like this, you know, I don't want to say the Matrix, but, you know, like it's not actually life. And you go to the airport and you've got 150 people, and I still do this, but like no one's looking up. No one's looking at each other. No one's talking to each other. Everybody's talking to somebody else through their little box.
I mean, I literally just texted someone now while you were saying this.
I saw that.
It's important. It's relevant to this. You've got a plane to catch. We've got to keep things moving along.
Yeah. So my point is that I'm constantly distracted too. Like I'm constantly distracted by the phone anyway, because I'm reading news and I'm checking email and I'm doing that. And just like having the burden of, you know, there's 4 social media networks that I'm a part of. And so there's
tons that we're all part of, whether we want to be or not.
I'm in there. Yeah. I'm on Facebook. I have an Instagram account. I'm on LinkedIn. Theoretically, I have Twitter, but I never look at it. And that's like a lot of communication. And then as I had kids, I was just like, I don't want to do that. So my Instagram got hacked. I was like, your account has been accessed from Ukraine. And I'm like, oh. And then I switched my password or whatever, and then I couldn't remember it and I couldn't sign back in. So I just said, you know, I'm done.
It's the universe.
So I stopped doing Instagram, really. I'll check it now and again. Sometimes it's important for me to interact with people like in our network. But I realize that because I'm not on it all the time, when I sign back in, I feel bad. Like I feel like I'm missing out. Like, oh, I should have sent that person that thing. Oh, I wasn't at that event. Oh, that person's getting so barreled. Oh, I wasn't at that. Oh, I should have. And then I just start feeling shitty. And then I think the biggest thing is for my kids, and not to sound like I'm some like super principled thing and I'm like the, you know, best father in the world, but I just know I'd be a way worse father if I feel like, oh, I got to check Instagram and I'm not like reading to you. Oh, I got to check Facebook and I'm doing blah, blah, blah.
Right.
I mean, I'm already distracted enough. Like the phone still is a distraction where I'm like, my dad's like, or my kid's like, Dad, will you play trains with me? And I'm going like, I'm reading about like the Trump impeachment. 1 second, I'm like, why am I doing that? So it's a constant,
Right.
It's one less of those things that I have to do. And I feel like in the grand scheme of things, like, did anything so important happen on social media that I won't hear about it?
Fair.
Yeah. I think probably the only thing that's really hard is I have a lot of friends that are in far-flung places, and so I don't talk to them as much.
Right.
Or I don't engage with people. Like, I would engage a lot with people that are in different places beforehand. But I think I do like to stay off of it because I think I do want to have less distractions for my kids.
Yeah, I hear you. A couple final questions.
Okay. Purple.
This is one that I love to ask. If you could go back in time and change one thing in history, what would it be and why?
Oh, I mean, it's like so cut and dry as the 2016 election. I mean, it is a disaster.
And, we said we weren't going to talk politics.
I'm not talking politics.
I jokingly asked you.
I wanted to make sure that. No, I'm not going to make any jokes, but I think that one thing has caused a lot of issues.
Yeah, for sure. Interesting. And then looking ahead, what are you most excited about in the year ahead, and why? What are you stoked about?
I'm personally just stoked on watching where my kids are going and seeing them like get bigger and do funny things and go on adventures with them. I'm excited to kind of get our strategic plan out into the world and kind of scale up in the way that I think that we can soon. And then I'm excited. I'm actually pretty excited about seeing some of the young leaders like really step up is actually pretty interesting. Like the thing last night, like all those people were much younger than me, and so I guess convicted is not the right word, but
spoke with conviction.
Not even spoke with conviction, like lived with conviction.
Yeah,
and that's a different thing.
Fair.
Like to actually live your values is something that I probably need to learn from them. Like I'm flying around all over the place. The lights are on at my house. I eat meat and things like that. Like I'm not the most sustainable person, but my values are like about sustainability and fixing this issue. But I think like, I don't know. I just think that like living, like stand up and be like, you're talking about one thing and you're not living it. And hearing that's really important. And, I spend my time working on environmental issues. So I don't feel that bad, but.
Yeah, man, I would say you're living it more than you think you are. I mean, there's a spectrum, and it's funny that you bring up the youth leaders. I was at a dinner last night with a young woman. She's 20 years old. She's been accepted to Stanford, but deferred for 2 years to focus on the climate strikes, the youth climate strikes, and she's part of the team that's organizing all that. So impressive. And we had this discussion around, what does it mean if you drive a truck or you eat a hamburger? Can you be a climate activist or not? And while sure, it's better if we all reduce our carbon footprints and do less of these things, I'm of the mind that, we need everybody. If you drive a truck, like that's okay. It doesn't mean you can't be a part of the conversation or can't be a climate activist. We need everyone to be a part of this no matter what. I'm never going to tell someone just because they eat a hamburger once in a while that they can't be a part of the solution.
No, I mean,
that's my personal thing, and that's the way I live my life. I try and do as best I can, as often as I can, but there are places in which we are part of a system that was created around us. And
no, I agree with that, and I think that I'm not super strident on sustainability, but I think that conservation is pretty important, and I don't think you're not gonna solve the climate crisis by taking away people's hamburgers. Like that will not stop it. Or people's trucks. Right. Like it is at a political, economic, and personal level. And so I think it needs to be done at all of those levels. But that's what I think it's just cool to see there's people living with those convictions to be like, I am not going to necessarily like negotiate on this future.
Yeah.
And that's like, it's interesting because you haven't seen that type of like vision for a long time. And I think conservation sometimes misses vision.
Interesting. Well, I mean, this has been a fascinating conversation, and I feel like conservation is such a big topic, and there's so much more to unpack there around, protecting these places, creating places that are both, environmentally just for the local community, allow for recreation, hopefully protect habitat for wildlife, and contribute to our overall goal of drawing down on climate and everything. So it's like so important. There's like so much more we can unpack for another conversation, but this has been really, really fun. Just getting to sit down with you because we don't get to do this that often. And I really love the work that you guys are all doing over at Save the Waves. I mean, the team's incredible and it's so impressive, and hopefully we can do more together.
Yeah, awesome. No, thank you for the opportunity. It's fun to be able to talk at these things, long length. I thought this was going to be more hilarious. We're going to try to...
we do catch up, normally we goof around quite a bit.
The Joao was calling in the notes, and I'm so intimidated by your professionalism. It is.
I'm laughing. I'm smiling.
There you go. I had to get something out of you, but no, it's great. I'm just thankful for the support of like partners like you guys, and I think what you're doing here is really cool. As you know, you got the award. Your vision's good, and it's just a pleasure to be part of the team too.
Thanks, man. It is a team effort.
Awesome.
Cool. Thanks, Nik.
Is the music going to come on? And
no.
Okay.
We'll let this roll out.
Where's the guy with the gong?
Just take the headphones off and leave.
Okay. Thanks, man.
Thanks, Nik.
Thanks, Nik, for such a fun conversation and for all you and the team do to protect our ocean. You cannot find Nik online, but you can find Save the Waves at savethewaves.org and on social media at Save the Waves Coalition. Also, special thanks to our buddy Joao de Macedo for calling in and for all his work. Joao is a humble yet hard-charging big wave surfer, and he's been a great champion for ocean health for years now. So thanks to both of you for all that you do. As I said at the top, we're stoked for the year ahead. Follow along at WSL Pure on social media, or check us out at wslpure.org. Or if you want to hit us up directly, send us an email at oneocean@wslpure.org. We're eager to hear from you. Until then, we will be working hard. We'll be back next week with an episode with Malati and Isabel from Bye Bye Plastic Bags. We'll also have Flotsam and Jetsam back. We'll be back on track and ready to go for 2020. It's going to be an amazing year. All right, see you soon.